Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to address the recent interview that was given by Victoria Alonso. She is one of the executive producers that was on Captain Marvel, working there with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And she received this interview by a man who was completely there just to fluff her up and make her look good. And she makes a lot of dumbass claims in this interview. And a number of people have already addressed some of these claims in their videos, and they've done great jobs. But I wanted to take a specific angle that's relevant to my own field and my own history, studying story, studying how to craft a story, and studying how to craft an effective tale. So one of the many ridiculous comments she makes is that when she's talking about the film Captain Marvel, she says that it's different because it has a female director, one of the directors is female, and it's about a female superhero, and that's the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film that features primarily a female superhero. And she said, other than that, it's just the same. It's the same as any of our other films, no different. Now that's an agenda-loaded statement. You can hear the echoes in there. You can see the fact that she's an ultra-feminist. It's written all over her makeupless face. And you can hear that the echoes, there's no difference. There's no difference between men and women. There's no difference, blah, 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 blah. Captain Marvel is an incredibly different film than any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And the single biggest difference is it doesn't have a story. It completely lacks story. Now, what do I mean by this? And that's what I want to spend some time on in this video, is going over this elusive concept of story and drawing out some of the problems and the many ways that Hollywood just consistently gets it wrong, and then also draw out some of the ways that, if you're a writer yourself, are just a connoisseur of good stories, things that you can look for. If you spend any time with professional writers, or you study fiction writing or whatnot, you'll hear people say this phrase. They describe themselves as character-driven authors, or they write character-driven fiction. You know, I'm all about character-driven fiction. And this is kind of a haughty claim. It's a way to sort of separate themselves from the quote-unquote riffraff, because the opposite of character-driven in this context is plot-driven. And the general knowledge, or the general consensus for a long time, is that plot-driven, that just doesn't get it. Plot-driven, that's the sci-fi original movies or whatever, that just, they got to have something happening and exploding or whatever, but to really delve into character, that's really where it's at. You let your characters drive the fiction. And on some level, that's true. You do need to have, primarily as your focus, well-developed characters. Because if they're well-developed, then they will do things, they will react, and they will do so in genuine manner, which creates a plot. It can't help but to. But this notion of character-driven versus plot-driven has been taken to such absurd extremes that people are often hesitant to talk much or focus on plot, and plot is essential. Now, what do I mean by story? Story is both character and plot. They need to work together seamlessly, and that means that you simply can't have an interesting character, and that's it. An interesting character snapshot. Some people pride themselves in writing what they call plotless fiction. That's nonsense. Only stuffy literature professors ever like something like that. You can't have a plotless piece of fiction. If you have a character, and if the character's developed well, then you need to allow that character movement. You need to allow things to happen to that character. You need to allow that character to react, to grow, to have an arc, a hero's journey, as we've discussed. And the plot, in terms of the plot side of the matter, the plot needs to make sense. It has to be integrated. It can't be too random. It can't ask the readers to believe more than one unbelievable thing at a time. It can't feel contrived. It has to be well paced. Both of these factors need to work together seamlessly to create good story. And I've talked about this before, but why doesn't Captain Marvel have a story? Because Carol Danvers has no growth or development as a character. It's just fascinating to hear the links and the mental gymnastics that people will undergo to try to argue that she does have some sort of arc in this film. One person commented on a recent video of mine trying to say, I was talking about the nonsense of her inflicting pain and assaulting the biker, electrocuting him and all of that when he just, dares to try and make time with her or whatever. And this person's comment on my video, I actually pinned it to the video because it was just so ridiculous. I wanted everybody to see the nonsense of it. Said that she's not a hero yet in the movie. She's still figuring out who she is. She's not a hero yet, so she can do that. Okay, so you actually want to tell me with a straight face that Carol Danvers at the end of Captain Marvel would never do that to a biker, would never assault a man who came up to her and told her to smile. Bullshit. Bullshit. Don't even try to say that with a straight face. There's no change in Carol Danvers' character throughout the entire film. She finds out some things. She finds out some things about herself. She finds out some things about the Kree Skrull War. But that's it. They have no bearing on her whatsoever. She's not allowed to change because she is laden. Her shoulders are loaded down with the feminist agenda. She is forced from the script to the direction to the portrayal of her by Brie Larson to be the ultra poster child, third wave, intersectional feminist icon. She's not allowed to have any flaws. She's only there to discover how amazing she always was. That's the feminist journey. They have no weaknesses. All they do is just constantly impress people around them and find out how amazing they already were. They didn't have to work for it and win in the end because, of course, they're the ultra powerful woman and they're going to have to win. That's Carol Danvers' so-called arc. That's not an arc. There's no change in her character. And it's not even Captain Marvel or our Carol Danvers character that there's no change in. There's no change in any of the characters. Think about it. Does Jan Rog, does he come to believe something or come to, no. Does Nick Fury? Well, he finds out that aliens are out there, but he's always had the idea of this initiative that he wants to put in place. And now he just goes ahead and names it the Avenger Initiative. There's no change in his character from beginning to end. Is there a change in her pilot friend? Nope. Her pilot friend finds out that aliens exist and her best friend's been there, but she's still the same amazing, strong female she always was, yada, yada, yada. There's no change in any of these characters. There's not even that great of a plot when you want to just divorce that of character. Things happen, and it certainly doesn't stand still. I mean, lots of things happen. There are fights. There's twists and turns and whatnot. But the plot itself is stymied by an inert character. For example, in the end, when the Kree have captured Carol Danvers and she's forced there to go meet with the, I forgot what they were called, the Annette Bening's character, I forgot what the consciousness was called, the Supreme Consciousness or whatever, when she's forced to go meet with them again, you know that she's never in any danger of actually remaining there in captivity. The film itself, the entire film has conditioned you to just be in awe of how badass she is. So at no moment during that do you think, oh, wow, is she gonna, man, this is gonna be a bit of a challenge for her. No, all she has to do is just have this little confrontation and then, blow the Supreme Being's mind with her amazing abilities and powers and then just break her shackles like it was nothing and then go ahead and take down the whole ship because she's awesome. And she castrates Ronan the Accuser in the bargain because you've got to have that part in there as well. This is not good story. This is not good story. It's elements of what could be a decent plot. What could be a decent plot if the inert character didn't drag it down. If they actually had some fleshed out characters with real progression, with real changes, with real arcs and reactions, could be a great story. A lot of the Marvel formula is there for that. So you have the comic reliefs, you have the well-paced elements to it, because that's the Marvel formula. They've been doing that for a while. But that is the large difference. But that is the huge difference between this film and any of Marvel's other films. So it's the lack of story. And you can say that in a different way. You can say that, of course, it's the fact that they decided to preach an agenda rather than tell a story. That's saying the same thing because they withheld story. They stopped themselves from creating any kind of decent story because they had an agenda to preach, because they had a platform. And that's what we're seeing from the Marvel Cinematic Universe from here on out. I mean, that certainly took over and held sway in Endgame. We saw that in a number of different ways. Even with some of the great scenes and great moments we had in Endgame, you can easily see that was starting this rise of the agenda in the MCU. And the fact that they are doing this level of promotion for a DVD release just tells you how desperate they are. I don't doubt for a second that they pulled some shenanigans in the promotion and the box office sales and whatnot of Captain Marvel. I don't know what. I'm not Mr. Conspiracy Theorist. I'm not going to claim they did X, Y, and Z. But clearly, you'd be unacceptably naive to think that they didn't do anything, because we know they did plenty. We know they've admitted themselves that the promotional arm of Disney went out and combated these quote-unquote trolls. In other words, anybody who dared criticize their film or their approach to this style of filmmaking. The Rotten Tomatoes shenanigans, I mean, they pulled plenty of this stuff already. You'd be incredibly naive to think that they didn't do anything fudging these numbers with the box office in some way or another. And it shows too in how desperate they are for this DVD to sell well. If the film had truly been loved and received as much as they claim, then DVD sales would automatically go through the roof, and they wouldn't have to be interviewing the producers and doing all this promotion on the internet. They don't do that for other films' DVD releases. But something's at stake here, because shortly after this DVD release, there's the Alita Battle Angel release. And I imagine it's a lot harder for them to control the quote-unquote narrative when it comes to DVD sales. And Alita has a passionate following, and a passionate following that's willing to do more than just go out on Twitter and be a bitch to everybody who dares disagree with them. Alita Battle Angel followers are ready to buy the novelization, the prequel novel I talked about, the DVD. They've seen the movie multiple times. They're doing anything they can for a sequel, because that was an amazing story. You look at the character of Alita in that story, she had a lot to learn. Yes, from the very beginning, she was always an amazing warrior. That was into her subconsciousness. She didn't have to go learn how to be a warrior. That was always within her. And to some degree, her story was about tapping into that. But she had to learn a lot. She's a very young child, and she had to learn not to be so trusting and not to be so naive herself, not to let her emotions get the better of her. Oh my gosh, we can't have that in a feminist-centered story anywhere today, a woman having to learn to control her emotions. In fact, that was one of the little subtexts there in Captain Marvel, that Jan Rog was telling her to control your emotions, and she had to show, no, hey, I'm all about my emotions because I am blah, blah, blah. I am woman, hear me roar, at the same time trying to assert that there's no difference between men and women. It's so laughable, the absolute lack of any kind of logical premise that they try to work from with this agenda. So this is a rich gold mine here, this Victoria Alonso interview. And I do want to talk about her comments of the X-Men. Again, in a future video, Fanman has done a recent video on that as well, because I do want to talk about the X-Men quite a bit this weekend. Dark Phoenix is releasing, and there's already been lots of idiotic statements and agenda platforming regarding that. But I want to talk about some other aspects of the X-Men as well. I'm going to talk about the animated series and such. So all that's to come. But until then, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching. Do you like comics that are unafraid to portray women as feminine and men as masculine? Do you enjoy being entertained rather than preached to? If so, then you'll love my own graphic novel, currently on Indiegogo. Tales from the Stacks is an anthology series in the vein of The Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt. It contains 3 uncanny tales to thrill and haunt you long after reading. With interior art by Dave T. and variant covers by John Malin, Kyle Ritter, and Kyung Lee, you have lots of options to choose from. You can find the link in the description below or search Indiegogo for Tales from the Stacks, and tell the comic industry you don't have to settle for their social agenda platforming. Thanks. And last but not least, don't forget that your Professor Geek now has a merch store. Check out the current options from t-shirts to magnets to the iconic Professor Geek coffee mug, and let me know if you'd like to see something else. The link is in the description, or you can go to cafepress.com/ProfessorGeek.